We are back with our discussion of Moby Dick in Junior English, and we are with you on page 351. It is now time for the final meeting. Think of it in terms of 3A, the last movie that you watched, where you know you're going to have the fateful coming together. Every Jackie Chan film is described this way. Am I right about this? Where you're going to have the final moment of the great fight. This is very much like the final moment of the great fight in the Iliad, when Achilles will meet Hector outside of the walls of Troy, and you know this inevitable moment is coming, and Hector, of course, is going to have to pay the fates, as they say. Ahab is going to have to pay the fates. Here we go now, back to our final moment with Moby Dick and Ahab.
He was even thus close to him, when, with body arched back, and both arms lengthwise high lifted to the poise, he darted his fierce iron, and his far fiercer curse into the hated whale. As both steel and curse sank to the socket, as if sucked into a morass, Moby Dick sidewise writhed, spasmodically rolled his nigh flank against the bow, and without staving a hole in it, so suddenly canted the boat over, that had it not been for the elevated part of the gunwale to which he then clung, Ahab would once more have been tossed into the sea. As it was, 3 of the oarsmen, who foreknew not the precise instant of the dart, and were therefore unprepared for its effects, these were flung out, but so fell, that in an instant 2 of them clutched the gunwale again, and rising to its level on a combing wave, hurled themselves bodily inboard again. The 3rd man helplessly dropping astern, but still afloat and swimming. Almost simultaneously, with a mighty volition of ungraduated, instantaneous swiftness, the white whale darted through the weltering sea. But when Ahab cried out to the steersman to take new turns with the line, and hold it so, and commanded the crew to turn round on their seats, and tow the boat up to the mark, the moment the treacherous line felt that double strain and tug, it snapped in the empty air. What breaks in me? Some sinew cracks. 'Tis whole again. Oars! Oars! Burst in upon him! Hearing the tremendous rush of the sea-crashing boat, the whale wheeled round to present his blank forehead at bay. But in that evolution, catching sight of the nearing black hull of the ship, seemingly seeing in it the source of all his persecutions, bethinking it may be, a larger and nobler foe, of a sudden he bore down upon its advancing prow, smiting his jaws amid fiery showers of foam. Ahab staggered. His hand smote his forehead. I grow blind. Hands, stretch out before me, that I may yet grope my way. Is it night? The whale! The ship! Cried the cringing oarsman. Oars! Oars! Slope downwards to thy depths. O sea, that ere it be forever too late, Ahab may slide this last time upon his mark. I see. The ship! The ship! Dash on, my men. Will ye not save my ship? But as the oarsmen violently forced their boat through the sledge-hammering seas, the before whale-smitten bow ends of 2 planks burst through, and in an instant almost, the temporarily disabled boat lay nearly level with the waves.
Top of page 353.
Wading, splashing crew, trying hard to stop the gap and bail out the pouring water. Meantime, for that one beholding instant, Tashtego's masthead hammer remained suspended in his hand, and the red flag, half wrapping him as with a plaid, then streamed itself straight out from him, as his own forward-flowing heart, while Starbuck and Stubb, standing upon the bowsprit beneath, caught sight of the downcoming monster just as soon as he. The whale! The whale! Up helm! Up helm! Oh, all ye sweet powers of air, now hug me close.
You got to get a sense of this if you were watching this in movie form. There is Ahab in his boat out away from his ship, when all of a sudden the whale turns and starts going, not at Ahab, not at his boat, But right at the ship itself, you got this huge whale swimming right at that huge ship. You're going to have a collision, and ultimately something's got to give, right? Of course, you can see why this novel was made into a film once or twice, right? You can imagine this scene, right, in your mind's eye.
Let not Starbuck die, if die he must, in a woman's fainting fit. Upheld, I say, ye fools! The jaw, the jaw! Is this the end of all my bursting prayers? All my lifelong fidelities? Oh, Ahab, Ahab, lo, thy work! Steady, helmsman, steady! Nay, nay, up helm again! He turns to meet us. Oh, his unappeasable brow drives on towards one whose duty tells him he cannot depart. My God, stand by me now! Stand not by me, but stand under me, whoever you are that will now help Stubb. For Stubb too sticks here. I grin at thee, thou grinning whale. Whoever helped Stubb or kept Stubb awake, but Stubb's own unwinking eye. And now poor Stubb goes to bed upon a mattress that is all too soft. Would it were stuffed with brushwood. I grin at thee, thou grinning whale. Look ye, sun, moon, and stars. I call ye assassins of as good a fellow as ever spouted up his ghost. For all that, I would yet ring glasses with thee, would ye but hand the cup. Oh, 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 thou grinning whale! But there'll be plenty of dumping soon. Why fly ye not, O Ahab? For me, off shoes and jacket to it. Let Stubb die in his drawers. A most moldy and oversalted death, though. Cherries, cherries, cherries. Oh, flask for one red cherry ere we die. Cherries, I only wish that we were where they grow. Oh, Stubb, I hope my poor mother's drawn my part pay ere this. If not, few coppers will now come to her, for the voyage is up.
The voyage is up. It's over.
From the ship's bows, nearly all the seamen now hung inactive. Hammers, bits of plank, lances, and harpoons mechanically retained in their hands, just as they had darted from their various employments, all their enchanted eyes intent upon the whale, which from side to side, strangely vibrating his predestinating head, sent a broad band of overspreading semicircular foam before him as he rushed. Retribution, swift vengeance, eternal malice were in his whole aspect. In spite of all that mortal man could do, the solid white buttresses of his forehead smote the ship's starboard bow, till men in timbers reeled. Some fell flat upon their faces. Like dislodged trucks, the heads of the harpooneers aloft shook on their bull-like necks. Through the breach, they heard the waters pour, as mountain torrents down a flume. The ship! The hearse! The second hearse! Cried Ahab from the boat. Its wood could only be American.
Top of 354.
The ship, the whale ran quivering along its keel, but turning underwater, swiftly shot to the surface again, far off the other bow, but within a few yards of Ahab's boat, where for a time he lay quiescent. I turned my body from the sun. What ho, Tashtego? Let me hear thy hammer. Oh, ye three unsurrendered spires of mine, thou uncracked keel, and only God-bullied hull, thou firm deck and haughty helm and pole-pointed prow, death-glorious ship. Must ye then perish, and without me? Am I cut off from the last fond pride of meanest shipwrecked captains? Oh, lonely death and lonely life. Oh, now I feel my topmost greatness lies in my topmost grief. Ho, ho! From all your furthest bounds, pour ye now in, ye bold billows of my whole foregone life, and top this one piled comber of my death. Towards thee I roll, thou all-destroying but unconquering whale. To the last I grapple with thee. From hell's heart I stab at thee. For hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee. Sink all coffins and all hearses to one common pool. And since neither can be mine, let me then tow to pieces while still chasing thee, though tied to thee, thou damned whale. Thus I give up the spear. The harpoon was darted. The stricken whale flew forward. With igniting velocity, the line ran through the groove, ran foul. Ahab stooped to clear it. He did clear it, but the flying turn caught him round the neck, and voicelessly, as Turkish mutes bowstring their victim, he was shot out of the boat ere the crew knew he was gone. Next instant, the heavy ice splice in the rope's final end flew out of the stark, empty tub, knocked down an oarsman, and smiting the sea, disappeared in its depths. For an instant, the tranced boat's crew stood still, then turned. The ship! Great God, where is the ship? Soon they, through dim, bewildering mediums, saw her sidelong, fading phantom, as in the gaseous Fata Morgana. Only the uppermost masts out of water, while fixed by infatuation or fidelity or fate to their once lofty perches, the pagan harpooneers still maintained their sinking lookouts on the sea. And now, concentric circles seized the long boat itself, and all its crew, and each floating oar and every lance pole, and spinning, animate and inanimate, all round and round in one vortex, carried the smallest ship of the Pequod out of sight.
The ship sinks.
But as the last roamings intermixingly poured themselves over the sunken head of the Indian at the mainmast, leaving a few inches of the erect spar yet visible, together with long streaming yards of the flag, which calmly undulated with ironical coincidings over the destroying billows they almost touched. At that instant, a red arm and a hammer hovered backwardly uplifted in the open air, in the act of nailing the flag faster and yet faster to the subsiding spar. A skyhawk that tauntingly had followed the main truck downwards from its natural home among the stars, pecking at the flag, and incommoding Tashtego there, this bird now chanced to intercept its broad fluttering wing between the hammer and the wood, and simultaneously feeling that ethereal thrill, the submerged savage beneath, in his death gasp, kept his hammer frozen there. And so the bird of heaven, with archangelic shrieks, and his imperial beak thrust upwards, and his whole captive form folded in the flag of Ahab, went down with his ship, which, like Satan, would not sink to hell till she had dragged a living part of heaven along with her, and helmeted herself with it. Now small fowls flew screaming over the yet yawning gulf. A sullen white surf beat against its steep sides. Then all collapsed, and the great shroud of the sea rolled on as it rolled 5,000 years ago.
Now, the end of the novel Moby Dick will bring us to the inevitable conclusion when Ahab meets this large whale. The way that the story will unfold allows the reader to know this is what's going to happen. Let's go ahead now and finish our annotative work. At the very end of our passage, we have a brief moment when there's this strange thing that happens. Nailing a flag up and onto the mast, a bird comes down, gets caught in the flag, somehow gets sewn up into the flag, and then the ship goes down, taking with it as its last death something alive. Of course, all kinds of symbolism at play here. Let's go ahead real quickly now and work through levels 2 and 3. At level 2A, it's pretty simple for us to ask what are some of the major messages or themes of a text like this. And one of them is quite simply, don't mess with nature. In the end, the forces of nature will win out. Another possible message here is the issue of pride. Ahab is a man of tremendous pride, hubris, and it will lead in the end to his own downfall. He cannot see as Starbuck is trying to explain to him. He cannot see that it would be in his best interest to just back away and let this thing go. At 2b, let's go ahead and concentrate now on the great conflict of this text. In many ways, the conflict is character versus another character, as in Ahab versus Moby Dick. But you could also say this is character versus nature, because of course Moby Dick is the archetypal force of nature. You could also say this is character versus an idea or society. Ahab struggling against the forces of nature. In many ways, the debate after this novel was, is Ahab somehow representative of America? That force which goes against all other forces and somehow continues to believe that it will succeed. Of course, we've also seen evidence of an internal conflict. Ahab is struggling against his own mind. Starbuck struggling against his own mind, his own thoughts, character versus self. So this is a classic example of a novel or a text where we can have multiple conflicts occurring simultaneously. Of course, allowing you as reader to focus on any number of them. Finally, level 3, how to relate. Let's go ahead and begin at 3a with other texts. What is for you your favorite ending of any movie? What is for you? It might not be your favorite movie, but it's your favorite ending of a movie. The way the movie ends. Does that ending involve a fight or a conflict? A penultimate coming together of good versus evil? And who wins in your favorite movie for you? Is it the forces of good or the forces of evil? One of the difficulties of Moby Dick is, which wins? The forces of good or the forces of evil? Many have said Melville's playing a very nasty game here when you start to actually pull for the whale instead of for the human being in the novel, namely Ahab. Of course, Ahab is responsible for the death of a lot of people. What is for you a film, again, back to film and or TV show. What is for you your favorite bad guy? Your favorite villain? Do you have one? And how does that villain die in the film or the TV show that you like the best? Is it after a long struggle, or is it a really kind of fast death? What is it for you? And finally, 3b. Let's ask this question. What for you has been one of the greatest challenges of your life? That in the end, you kind of knew you probably weren't going to survive, you weren't going to win, but you did it anyway. You challenged yourself to try in spite of the fact that you knew you might not win. Do you have a moment like that in your life that you can write about? A moment when you were going up against your Moby Dick, and you knew you probably weren't going to survive, but you decided to try it anyway. Another 3B question. Have you been in a circumstance where you recognized that someone was making a bad choice that was going to end in you going down with the ship, but it was too late for you to change or do anything about it, and so you had to somehow come to terms with it? By the way, our novel ends interestingly. Everyone dies except for Ishmael, who ends up using Queequeg's coffin as a boat. And that's what saves him, so that the story can ultimately be told. And our final sighting of Ahab, the last time Moby Dick is seen as he comes out of the water, we see Ahab strung in ropes along the outside of the body of Moby Dick as the whale takes Ahab down one last time into the watery deep. And that's the end of Ahab and the end of his vengeance. Well, there you go, an introduction to Melville's Moby Dick. Thank you very much.